The middleweight sport adventure touring motorcycle market has witnessed an interesting turn of events in recent years. For the longest of time, the Kawasaki Versys 650 was the choice for those who wanted a practical and affordable motorcycle, especially since the Suzuki V-Strom 650 became a whole lot more expensive with the introduction of BS6 emission norms. Now, this motorcycle for 2022 had received a big cosmetic change as well as a few other features, but all is not smooth sailing for the most popular 650 from Team Green, because it faces a formidable challenge from the Triumph's Tiger Sport 660. This motorcycle has the bigger engine that develops a lot more power than this motorcycle, and at the same time it also costs a great deal more. For now, let's keep money out of the picture and let's find out which one of these 17-inch wheel road biased adventure motorcycles is the one for you. Let's begin by talking about a major point of differentiation between these two motorcycles: their engines. The Kawasaki's parallel twin has been around for some time and has earned a reputation for its refinement, rideability, and overall reliability. The Tiger's 660cc engine debuted in the Trident Roadster and has the upper hand on paper, with its inline triple developing more power and more torque. But as we've always believed, a spec sheet only tells you a part of the story, for it is the way these engines perform in the real world that truly defines a motorcycle. Both of these engines are as different as chalk and cheese. The Triumph's engine is notably the peppier and sportier engine of the two, but what really also stands out is its superior tractability. I could leave the gearbox in 6th and ride at 40 or even at 140 kph without the need to downshift by pulling an overtake. Now, this kind of flexibility is really welcome at days when you're riding over long distances on busy highways and you have to keep adjusting your speed continuously. The Kawasaki's engine isn't as flexible and you will have to work their gearbox for swift progress. Not that you'll mind it too much, because the gearbox is smooth for the most part while the clutch action is light. The adjustable lever offers better ease of use, unlike the Triumph's non-adjustable lever that people with small hands will find stretched too far out. Then again, the Triumph has a solution in the form of an optional bi-directional quick shifter that works well at all speeds. That's yours for Rs 26,000 only. When it comes to performance, the Triumph's higher peak power, torque and short gearing ensures it is the quicker motorcycle of the line. Although we did notice that when it comes to the run from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 kph, the difference in times taken by both motorcycles isn't a lot. Where the Kawasaki has an advantage over the Triumph is in how calm and smooth this engine feels when you're cruising at high speeds. At similar speeds, the Triumph's engine feels notably buzzier and busier. The buzziness never gets to the point of being bothersome, however, it is clearly noticed. Considering these bikes are supposed to ferry people over long distances in comfort, the Kawasaki's relatively smoother and relaxed engine lends itself better to the role of a touring motorcycle. That being said, personally, the Triumph's sportier, rev-happier engine is what appeals to me. The other area where the Kawasaki establishes itself as the superior road tourer is its Showa adjustable suspension system. You've got preload and rebound adjustment at the front and a remote preload adjustment for the monoshock, unlike the Triumph that makes do with a non-adjustable Showa fork and monoshock with remote preload adjustment. That said, the Triumph has longer suspension travel at both ends, although that doesn't translate to a plusher ride than the Kawasaki. Even in stock settings, the Kawasaki suspension does a much better job of soaking up everything from mild bumps to really large potholes in comparison to the Triumph. In fact, at all speeds, the ride quality is plusher in comparison. That's not to say that the Triumph is really uncomfortable over bad roads. In fact, at low speeds, the bumps and potholes are transmitted to a greater degree up your spine in comparison to the Kawasaki, but it isn't really bothersome. Between the two motorcycles, it is the Triumph that will put a much wider grin on your face every time you go around corners. It has the sharper steering geometry, the tires are grippier and fatter, and the chassis is light and flickable. And all of these factors come together to give you a much more involving and enjoyable experience. The Kawasaki isn't too far behind the Tiger on a winding road, but being the heavier motorcycle and with a relatively relaxed steering geometry, the rider had to put in more effort to steer this bike, especially during quick direction changes. Also, the Dunlop tires, though decent on their own, aren't as grippy or feelsome as the Tiger's excellent Michelin Road 5s, especially in the wet. Speaking of riding in the wet, both motorcycles are equipped with switchable traction control systems to keep everything in check. The Tiger also gets a dedicated rain mode in addition to the road mode. During our time with these bikes, the traction control systems on both bikes were handy while dealing with some low grip surfaces. That said, it was the Kawasaki system that worked more transparently in comparison to the over-eager nanny on the Triumph, which we found to be unnecessarily intrusive. Experienced riders, in fact, wouldn't mind turning the system off completely. When it comes to braking, the Kawasaki's stronger initial bite and feedback from the lever provides that little extra confidence in comparison to the Tiger's brakes that require a firmer pull at the lever. All said, the Triumph brakes aren't lacking in any way. Now moving on, there will be a few of you out there who'll also base their buying decisions on the way these bikes look. And as has been the case in this comparison test so far, both bikes bring something unique to the table. The Versys' new face looks sharp and aggressive, and I think it looks really good. This new fairing also adds more visual mass, so those of you who are looking for the bike with a better road presence, this is the one to go for. But as was the case with the previous bike, the Kawasaki's design appears disproportionate at the rear, especially with the 17-inch wheels that look small in comparison to the rest of the bodywork. The Triumph definitely looks like the sportier motorcycle of the two, and that's down to its sleek, compact and proportionate design. It may not have the road presence of the Kawasaki, but it is hands down the better looking motorcycle. As far as build quality is concerned, we didn't find any issues with either motorcycle. Although there are a few areas such as the paint finish or the plastic quality where the Triumph feels a notch better. Both motorcycles are quite comfortable for spending long hours in the saddle. On the Versys, you sit upright and this foot peg position is neutral. The problem is with the seat because it is too soft and you begin to sink after a couple of hours of riding. The Triumph's longer and firmer seat offers better support and comfort over long distances. In terms of the riding position, you have to lean slightly forward and these foot pegs are a little too rear set compared to that Versys, but it isn't uncomfortable either. That said, this riding position isn't as comfortable and spacious as the Versys, and that also applies when you're carrying a pillion on board. In theory, adjusting the Triumph's windscreen, especially on the fly, should be easier than on the Kawasaki, given the fact that it is a one-handed operation that involves pushing down or pulling up the screen using a bar. In practice, however, the mechanism was cumbersome to use and required way more effort than it should, thus defeating the purpose. The other issue I have is with the way the windscreen rattles while riding over bad roads. That takes away some of the premium feel you'd expect from a bike in this class. On the other hand, the Kawasaki's windscreen mechanism, though impossible to adjust on the fly, is far easier to operate. All one needs to do is to push a button and adjust the height of the windscreen as per preference. The wind protection offered by the windscreens on both bikes is pretty generous, but again, it's the Kawasaki screen that does a slightly better job of deflecting head-on wind. One big aspect about owning a multi-cylinder motorcycle is ownership costs, especially if you're going to ride these motorcycles for the touring purpose that they were built for. A quick assessment of the service schedules and prices reveals that the Kawasaki requires a service every 6 months, while the Tiger needs to be serviced only once a year. The cost at each service ranges between Rs 6,000 to 8,000 for the Kawasaki. And while the Triumph's annual service is slightly higher, it is obvious that the Japanese motorcycle will cost more money to run over the years. Choosing between these two motorcycles is going to be a matter of heart over head or the other way around. To my heart, the Triumph Tiger Sport 660 appeals the most. And its engine, the sound, its sleek design, or the way it handles are reasons why I gravitate towards it. But this is a comparison of two road-biased adventure motorcycles, and when it comes to life on the road, the Kawasaki Versys 650 is the better choice because it has the smoother engine, the nicer suspension, the larger tank, and the comfier seat. And the clincher for the Kawasaki is its pricing. At Rs 7.36 lakh, the Versys 650 is a lot more affordable than the Tiger. In fact, price is the Achilles heel of the Triumph. At a starting price of Rs 8.95 lakh and going up to Rs 9.08 lakh for this colorway, the Triumph is an eye-wateringly expensive proposition. Add the quick shifter and the Tiger's value for money proposition takes a hit. So much so that even its stablemate, the brilliant Street Triple R, stands tantalizingly close at Rs 9.15 lakh. While it may not have the comfort of the Tiger Sport, the Street Triple has much better power and an adjustable suspension to offer. All said, the Tiger Sport will still appeal to someone looking for a sporty, road-biased ADV with money being no object. The Kawasaki Versys 650, however, is the well-rounded package.